Rabbi?
Yeah.
Yeah, David and I are walking in Emily Oaks Nature Preserve.
Oh, nice. I was there about 2 years ago. Maybe, I don't know, it was last year or 2 years ago. Somebody wanted
Very
to
nice. Yeah.
They have like a little meeting room there. Very beautiful. The whole thing is beautiful. And they had like
That's
a nice,
kids you're hearing. Yeah.
nice. It's a beautiful little spot in the middle of.
It really is. It
The
really
middle
is.
of-
They have a lake with geese,
Yes.
with real geese.
Like- You could chase after them and make something with the goose fat.
No. Oh,
The
no.
Jew, we are like the Native American. The Native American famously used every aspect of the buffalo in their livelihoods, and we used every aspect of the goose.
That's
You
right.
look at Jewish recipes. We used the fat, we used the liver, we used every part of the meat and the feathers. Don't forget the feathers.
That's true.
We used it all.
And the beak. Yeah, everything.
We eat the
The
whole
beak.
of a goose.
Yes.
Geese are kosher, aren't they?
Yes.
We used it. If you look at like a cookbook from Eastern Europe, like there was a guy who I met, the last one, like in the 1990s, I'm going to say it must have been like 91 or so, when there was the massive wave of Jews from the former Soviet Union that were coming to Israel.
From the where?
From Russia,
Former
from the
Soviet-
former Soviet Union. Yes.
To Israel. So there was this massive wave of Jews that came. So you were encouraged to adopt a family to help them with their readjustment, their klita, readjustment into their adjustment into Israeli society. So I don't know what organization it was, but we were assigned a family we lived in Neve Yaakov at the time, and we were assigned a family, a Russian family. This family knew no Hebrew and no English.
Huh.
And we knew no Russian.
Okay.
But somehow it worked. And my kids, learned lots of Russian phrases, and we were learning them, and they were, working on their English and their Hebrew. And it was just absolutely fascinating. They were a wonderful, fascinating family. So the father was the husband. Yeah, I would say he was in his young 40s. He was considered a scientist. Being a scientist was the best category you could be in when you made this transition, because Israel had all sorts of money and programs available to help scientists adjust, because they wanted the scientists.
Scientist.
Right. So, but he was a library scientist. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter. He was categorized as a scientist, and he got the benefit of all these programs. And eventually he was, initially he was set up with some kind of program in Haifa, which he lived in Jerusalem. It was, so in the beginning he was doing a lot of traveling. But anyways, he was just a master, and so was his family. They were a master of making do with little. And this worked in so many areas of his life. For instance, he had a specialty. He wasn't like, and apparently this was common in the Soviet, in Russia, but also the Soviet Union, that you specialized. So and your specialization could be very narrow. So in his particular case, he was a library. His area was library science, but his specialty was a particular publisher of books. That was his real area of specialty. And he wrote, I think, over 140 published articles on that publisher. And many of the articles were translations of his original articles. So there may have only been like 5 or 10 original articles, but he published them. He had it translated into French and had it published in French too. And being published was very important when it came to his status. So the fact that he had 140 published papers gave him great status, even though they really, it was like, this was such a sort of kind of characterization of how, of his method. He could take stuff and turn it into a lot. So he had this book that he wrote about, or one of his books, I think he wrote a couple books, but it's all about this publisher. So he brought his books to, he would go to like a book fair, and he would sell his books, but he would also use them to trade, because many of the book purveyors would trade you if you were another person there. So let's say he brought 100 of his books. I don't know if he sold any of his actual books, but he used it to trade. So he came back with, let's say, close to 100 books from other authors, and they were very, well read, and they were like a culture. They and their family, their friends would get together for evenings of, and they'd bring out a guitar and schmooze, and regularly they were with friends for several hours at night. They just had a very rich life, but they made do with very little, material stuff. But so one of the books that he got was an author who wrote about the recipes of Eastern European Jews. What happened was it was a chef from like Paris, and it was in the 30s, and he already sensed that this epic of Eastern European Jewry was ending, not because of Hitler, but because it was just it felt like it was ending. And he wanted to, for the sake of posterity, gather the recipes. So this chef, the book was originally written in, I guess, French, and then was translated into English. And so my friend didn't read English, so he asked me if I wanted the book. So I took the book and I was reading it. And I mentioned to Rabbi Cardoza that this thing about food, how sort of magical it is that food can carry culture, and that you could dip into it. You could like revisit something of a culture by eating its food. And we feel that way. When we eat our cultural food, and especially if we haven't had it in a while, and then we have it, it's like dipping into culture or dipping into history. He wanted to suggest it's dipping into relationships. That what somehow food carries the love, that the nurture that was part of the preparation is somehow embodied in the food, and that so when we're experiencing it, we're experiencing the love, that there's some kind of love captured in it. But even that, he couldn't explain how food has it, just that it tends to have it. I remember one time I was at Bugsy's with my grandfather, bless his memory, and he ordered the soup, and he took one taste of it. He goes, "This tastes exactly like my mother's soup." And then I just let him be, and he was transported for all the while that he was eating that soup. And I know we've all had experiences sort of like that.
Yeah, there's a movie.
Yeah. What's it called?
A movie about an Indian boy who comes, African boy who actually, he was so traumatized by his life in Africa, but they have him eating his, I can't remember, but it's that thing.
Did it comfort him?
Yes, it definitely comforted him.
Yeah.
He was able to have memories, before the terrorists came and took all the kids away and made him a terrorist. So, yeah.
Oh, he was those child war.
Yeah.
Those
Right.
soldiers.
Right.
Also,
Yeah.
there's another dimension, like the smell of a place. Each house has
Yeah.
a different smell. If you think about the smell of your father's house or of
Yeah.
your grandfather's house,
Yeah.
it had a distinctive thing, and that makes a big impression. The sorts
Yeah.
of that you get from smell and taste,
And that could be the smell. Also, is part of the memory thing with the food too.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Because
Smell is
food
a
has
big-
aroma.
Yeah.
Reach nekoach.
Yeah, and there's some people like I forgot who points it out. Might be the B'nai Yissaschar. Somebody points out. I mean, I think it's a Medrash originally. That smell was the only sense that was not affected by the eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It says she saw it. She touched it. She saw it. She tasted it.
Did she hear it? Well, she heard
Well,
the
but the thing was the hearing, because she was in conversation. The fruit itself she didn't hear, but the conversation with the snake,
right.
so she had the back and forth with the snake. I think that's how the hearing.
Isn't that?
But
isn't
no,
that what-
but not the smell. That's why they say Mordechai and Esther. Mordechai and Esther are a tikkun for the hate of eating from the tree of knowledge. First of all, there's one opinion that the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil was wine, and that's why everything happens at wine events with Esther. But also, she's Hadassah, and Hadassah is a smell. It's primarily used as a for its fragrance, and he's called Mordechai, which is related to mordror, which is myrrh. So they both are named after fragrance or things that bring fragrance. So yeah. But,
if I'm not mistaken, isn't this confirmed by biology, that the sense of smell is the only one that does not go through the brain? It goes directly into the central. There's no mediation by any cognitive facility
I
whatsoever.
remember that there is something like that. Just going to look at this, the olfactory nose, smell, different.
They're singing.
And also, so how we got to this?
Geese.
Yeah, because in that book, almost every recipe had goose fat. Almost every this was like, he was like gathering the flavors of Eastern Europe, and goose fat seems to have been the dominant medium in which the stuff was. Here, let's see, a vision, smell or vision.
Uh-oh.
Oh, here is a sense of smell stronger than
Yes, we
sight.
can't go there.
Why?
Yeah, I don't know. Yes, but I also heard that. And then you have animals with these incredible senses of smell, who see the world through smell. Dogs. That's one of the things.
Yes.
When I got a dog, I was reading up about dogs, and they were talking about how for dogs, like for people, it's very much we experience the world through what we see for the most part, but dogs experience the world through what they smell. So when you see a dog like on a walk and it's like sniffing, it's the equivalent of a dog reading the newspaper, finding out who's been on, what's been going on in the neighborhood and stuff like that. All through its sense of
Yes,
smell.
my brother tells me when he took his dog for a walk in the snow, all of a sudden his dog will start and dig and dig and dig and dig, and then there'll be a bone, way down.
Yeah. Or when you see them, also those cute little dogs. Sometimes it's like cute little bloodhounds, or where you see them in the airport because they're sniffing. Oftentimes they're sniffing for food or for plants in the airports now, not just for bombs. But you see these cute little dogs and they're just going up and down, and then they stop next to somebody. Okay, so that was important.
Yeah.
Now,
Your
Um,
talk about him, the Russian guy, and how they used to
Yeah.
have these nights and everything.
Yeah.
I just love in the Russia house, John Le Carre's not the Russia house. Oh,
Did he have any Yiddishkeit?
probably not.
It doesn't feel like it. He has a couple characters. Whenever he writes about Jewish characters, it doesn't feel like he has affinity. He seems to write it like other English people that write about Jews. It doesn't feel. I love.
I think David was asking about the Russian that you were training.
My Russian guy.
You're Russian. You're Russian. Yeah.
I would say this. He didn't have. It wasn't part of his life, but he was open to it. And his kids would come over like on Shabbos and stuff. His kids, he had one son who was like a teenager. Also, you could tell that they were going to do well in Israel. There were some families, it wasn't so clear, but they were just so, they hit the ground running as far as making decisions that would help them settle well in Israel. Like all the kids studied like computers or other all technology or science, and you could just tell that they were gonna quickly adjust to the place. But his kids would come over for Shabbos, and they did too. So they were definitely open to it, but it wasn't a big part of their life. But they had Western culture. Like he had a collection of books, like the great works of Western culture, that clearly included Russian authors, but also included Dickens and, a lot of the great Western writers. And it was funny because he treasured these, like they were very well kept, but they were made out of the cheapest paper and the absolute cheapest binding. Like you're absolutely amazed that that there were places that made stuff out of this that already looked like it was falling, like the paper was going to crack and crumble, and they were only a few decades old. But he had so they had music, they had a lot of culture, they had Western literature, but not, we had to introduce them to the most basic aspects of Judaism. They had no real Jewish practice, or not a lot of Jewish knowledge at all. Okay, now we are still in evaluating. We've evaluated people, we've evaluated houses, we're evaluated fields. I don't know if we read this last time, I'm not sure. That is that he commanded us about field appraisals. And that is saying, if anyone consecrates a field that he holds, and if a field that is not of his holdings, and likewise with a field of his holdings, its appraisal should be in accordance with its seed requirements with the purchase of the field. So in other words, it doesn't necessarily have to be his field, because he's dedicating the value of the field. He's not dedicating the field itself. But when you figure out the value of a field, you have to figure out the land, but you also have to figure out the yield. The yield. That's what it means about the zera. You have to figure out the yield. So, and likewise with a field of his holdings, the appraisal shall be in accordance with its seed requirement. And with a purchase field, the priest shall compute for him the proportionate appraisal. The regulations of this commandment have already been explained in Tractate Arachin. One should not think that these 4 types of appraisals have commonality such that they will be necessary to count them as one commandment. Yeah, I think we did do this at the end. Rather, they are 4 commandments. Each one is a law that is separate from the other. However, what is common to them is only the name, appraisal, such that they share one name. And with careful observation, this is clear. And this can happen sometimes that you're using a similar name. Now, why? He could have said this by tzarat. We call tzarat of the house, tzarat of clothing, and tzarat of the person. We all call it tzarat. But is each type of tzarat really the same thing? Or is it a shared name? You would think that it's very similar to this. It's using a name. Also, Zav and Zava, they share this name that has to do with the flow. They share, there are many common laws between them, but they are not related conditions. The Zov is some kind of gonorrhea-like condition. The woman is some kind of bleeding from her uterus. But they both have that. So they're sharing a name, but they're not necessarily identical with each other. So it would be with these various arachin, when somebody donates the value of a person, or donates the value of a house, or donates the value of land, they use the term arachin, value, but they are really, they are separate mitzvot because they share a name, but they are not the same in detail. Next law, and that is that we are commanded that anyone who benefits from consecrated property add a fifth. Likewise, if he eats consecrated food, meaning if a non-priest ate from priestly tithe inadvertently, he pays for what he ate, or the measure of what he benefited with the addition of a fifth. So you're not doing this on purpose. You accidentally used something that belongs to the Beit HaMikdash, or could be truma. These are consecrated to some degree. They have some level of sanctity. They are not supposed to be used by me, let's say. I accidentally did. So part of fixing that is not only do I pay for what I took, which I shouldn't have taken, but I also have to add a fifth. Now, when they say add a fifth here, we've seen this from the Gemara in many places. You would think that, let's say it was worth $100, adding a fifth would mean that you add $20. So altogether it'd be $120, but that's actually not how they do it. What they do is you add an amount that will represent a fifth of the total after you added it. So really it's adding a quarter. So let's say it was valued at 100. Now I add 25. So that 25 is 1/5 of the new total, which is 125. And that's how they understand add a fifth. So yes, so it says he shall pay for that wherein he was remiss about the consecrated things, and he'll add a fifth to it, as well as his saying, but if a man eats of consecrated things inadvertently. The regulations of this commandment have already been explained in Tractate Ne'ilah and Tractate Truma as well. There are people who have this custom. It seems to be fairly widespread. Let's say you're collecting tzedakah in your house, and you have money in the tzedakah box, and then suddenly you need money. So there are people that will borrow from the tzedakah, and then when they pay it back, they'll add a fifth. And it's sort of modeled after this rule over here. Again, it's not required, and it's not exactly those situations, because here you're not doing it by accident, but it's a way of making sure that you don't appear to be you put aside tzedakah and then misusing it for yourself. So just like over there's a kind of misappropriation. It was accidental. It was a kind of misappropriation. So you, when you're trying to fix it, in the end, you add that fifth. So you would do sort of over here as well. Mitzvah 119. That is that he commanded us that the sapling of the 4th year be completely holy. All right, so now let's say you planted a fruit tree. So the way it works is you have year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. Now, year 1 doesn't necessarily have to be a 365-day year. Year 1 could be 1 month. If you plant it, let's say, I think the counting starts from Rosh Hashanah. So if you plant it, let's say a month before Rosh Hashanah, let's say 31 days before Rosh Hashanah, then when it gets to Rosh Hashanah, it's called year 2. So you have, by that Rosh Hashanah, it's already year 2. By next Rosh Hashanah, it's year 3. And next Rosh Hashanah, it would be year 4. So it's 4th year that as that next year's going. So the rule is, it is called completely holy. And that is maybe Exal say, all its fruit shall be holy for jubilation before the Lord. So what does that mean? And its law is that one bring it up to Jerusalem and its owners eat it there, exactly like the second tithe. So this is called Neta Ravai, the 4th year of a fruit from a tree. The first couple of years, you can't eat this at all. The fruit is just not used. So we talked about this not too long ago about apple trees. That apple tree, I went to an apple orchard and I asked somebody if there are any apples from the first 3 years of the tree, and the guy pointed to some trees and he said those apples are in the first 3 years. So it is possible for some of these trees to produce a fruit. They're not growing those apple trees from seeds, they're growing them from saplings. Because again, that's a problem with apple trees, is that if you plant them from seeds, they don't reliably grow to be like the fruit that those seeds came from for some reason. So they grow them from saplings. Which are grafts. I think they cut off branches or some way, and then they create saplings. But you can get apples within the first couple of years of the apple tree. Let's say you did. If for some weird reason you got an apple in the first year or the second year, you can't eat those apples at all. But now you're in the 4th year. So again, let's say you planted the apple, you planted the sapling on Rosh Hashanah, Erev Rosh Hashanah, a month before Rosh Hashanah, of the year 2000. So then, by the year 2000, it's already called year 1. It's already called second year. By that Rosh Hashanah, it's already called the second year. So in 2000, it already is still called the second year, even though it's only a month old. And then in 2001, it's called the 3rd year. So in 2002, it's already called the 4th year. And so during that year of 2002, after Rosh Hashanah of 2002, during that next year, it is called the 4th year. During that year, you're going to take the fruit and you're going to bring it to Jerusalem and you're going to eat it there, just like you do with the second tithe. A second tithe that they're referring to is, let's say you have olives, you have 100 bushels of olives. So you're going to take 2 bushels and you're going to give it to a Kohen. That's Truma. Then you're going to take 9.8 bushels and you're going to give that to a Levi. He's going to take one of the bushels and he's going to give it to a Kohen. The bushels you gave to the Levi are called Meiser, tithe. Then you're going to take a second tithe. That second tithe is going to be 8.8 bushels because that's what you have, of the entirety. You had 88 bushels left. You're going to take 8.8 bushels and those 8.8 bushels are going to be taken to Jerusalem and eaten. Or you can redeem them onto coins and take the coins and then bring them to Jerusalem and buy food and drink in Jerusalem then. So this could, it doesn't say this, but it could be that part of the purpose of this is to keep Jerusalem filled with fruits and vegetables, and because that's an indication of a vibrant culture and society and a place where you always have fresh food and vegetables and things like that coming in, and abundance of food. It was one of the things that many Russians said when they came in the 90s to Israel, that they were told, because every once in a while people would send videos of the marketplaces in Israel, and they were told it's propaganda. It's not true. There's no place that has food like that, because where they were, There was hardly any fresh fruit and vegetables. But it was one of the things, like coming to Israel, going to the marketplaces and just seeing stalls with tons of fruit and vegetables out there. And that's just an indication of some kind of vibrant life when you see that. So that might be the reason why you're bringing it to Jerusalem. It also encourages you to come to Jerusalem. It also makes sure that when you come there, you yourself have food to eat there. So like the second tithe, you're bringing this fruit from Netaravai. And the priests do not have any portion in it. In other words, this is not going to be given to anybody else. You're going to eat it. As is stated, and every man will have his consecrated things. Scripture drew all of the consecrated things and gave them to the priest. The only ones left over from them were the thanks offering, the peace offerings, the Pesach offering, the animal tithe, the second tithe, and the fourth year sapling, which are the owners. So all other holy things end up with the Kohanim, also Levim. It's true that you have the Levites have some, but otherwise you have this. It's interesting. He didn't mention Shemitah, the fruits from Shemitah, because they also have a sanctity. We call it Kedusha Shvis. And that also you can eat. You can't sell them, you can't bring them to market, but you can eat them. So it's interesting that he does not mention the Shemitah stuff. And the regulation of this commandment have already been explained in the last chapter of Meiser Sheni. By the way, those chapters in Mishnah that deal with the agricultural law are very similar to tax law. So they should be of special interest to accountants.
How does this, when we say Yom HaBikurim, which first fruits are they? But I missed what you said about the third year.
Yeah.
What its status is. If it does produce, then what? I bring it to the temple. But is that called Bikurim, or is it only in the fourth year?
I don't bring it to the temple. I only bring it to Jerusalem. And I eat it. That's what he's saying. I don't give it to a Kohen. These are not the first fruits. First fruits are, let's say you have a field or an orchard, the very first ones to ripen, those are called the first fruits. So every year you have first fruits, but they're the first ones to ripen from your regular. You could have an orchard that's 500 years old, and it's still producing first fruits, in that the first ones to ripen are chosen, and then they're going to be brought for an annual Bikurim pilgrimage. These are different. These really do represent a kind of first fruits in the sense that they're the first ones you're getting to eat, but they're not Bikurim. These are Netaravai. And as he's pointing out, they don't go to the Kohen. Bikurim go to the Kohen.
Okay, what about in the third year? And I've gotten fruit.
So this is fourth year.
I'm asking about the third, though.
Same as
Throw
the
it out.
second.
You have to throw it out. Yeah, you throw it out.
You just throw it out?
Or you let it. You can't get any benefit. You can't give it to your animals. You can't get any benefit. I mean, I don't think you have to stop them if they're eating it, but it's supposed to lay fallow. It's not supposed to be or used. Now, will it benefit your field? I guess it could benefit as a kind of fertilizer. And what happens if you see your animal? I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure if you see your animal eating it, you don't have to stop them. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure about that. I'm going to be in the 80%. I'm going to go 80.
Okay. All right.
That's using the most up-to-date probability methods that I learned from David.